Have you ever noticed that life becomes the quietest right before something powerful happens? There are moments when everything around you feels silent, heavy, and uncertain, as if the world itself has dimmed the lights. It is in those moments when hope seems distant and answers seem hidden that many people feel the most alone. Yet history, faith, and the deepest stories of the human spirit reveal a mysterious pattern that few people recognize while they are living through their hardest nights. The midnight hour is not just a time on the clock. It is a spiritual moment, a turning point when darkness appears to have taken control, but something unseen is already beginning to move. Many of the most miraculous moments recorded in the Bible happened in the deepest hours of darkness, when people felt abandoned, exhausted, and surrounded by impossible circumstances. It was at midnight that Paul and Silas, locked in a prison cell, bruised and chained, chose to sing instead of surrender. It was in the silent darkness before dawn that the stone was rolled away from the tomb and Jesus rose, proving that what looks like an ending may only be the beginning of a miracle. And when Lazarus had already been declared dead, when hope had already been buried, that was the moment when God demonstrated that human timelines do not limit divine power. These stories are not just ancient events written on fragile pages of history. They are living reminders that darkness often becomes the stage where God reveals His greatest power. The midnight hour is symbolic of those seasons in life when everything feels uncertain. It is when the job disappears, when the relationship breaks, when the diagnosis arrives, when the dream collapses, or when the prayers seem to echo back in silence. Many people assume that when things grow dark, it means God has stepped away. But the pattern of faith suggests the opposite. Sometimes the darkness is not proof of abandonment, but preparation. Sometimes the silence is not rejection, but positioning. When a seed is planted in the soil, it disappears into darkness before it ever grows into something visible. When a child is about to be born, there is a long night of pain before the first cry of life fills the room. The human mind naturally fears darkness because we cannot see what is happening. But God has never been limited by what human eyes can or cannot see. In fact, some of the most powerful transformations happen in places where light has not yet reached. Think about the prison where Paul and Silas were held. The chains were real. The walls were real. The guards were real. Everything about that moment looked like defeat. Yet in that very prison cell, while the rest of the world slept, something extraordinary was unfolding. Their praise rose in the darkness, and suddenly the earth itself began to shake. Doors opened, chains fell, freedom appeared in the very place that had been designed to hold them captive. The midnight hour became the doorway to a miracle. This is why the darkest moments of life should never be mistaken for the final chapter of your story. When everything feels quiet, when every door seems closed, when every option appears to disappear, there may be movements happening that you cannot yet see. The human heart often wants answers immediately, but God often works through processes that unfold slowly and mysteriously. The night may grow deeper before the dawn appears, but the dawn is already on its way even when the sky still looks black. Many people give up in the midnight hour because they believe nothing is happening, not realizing that heaven may be preparing something beyond their imagination. Your midnight hour might look different from someone else's. It might be a season of waiting. It might be a season of confusion. It might be a season where every step forward feels impossible. But the powerful truth woven throughout faith and history is that darkness has never been able to stop the arrival of light. The very moment when everything seems lost might be the exact moment when something extraordinary is about to begin. The question is not whether darkness will come, because every life experiences nights of uncertainty. The real question is whether you will close your eyes to the miracle coming at midnight, or whether you will keep believing that, even in the deepest darkness, God may already be moving in ways you cannot yet see. There is something deeply mysterious about the moments when life seems to pause in darkness, when the path ahead disappears and every familiar source of comfort grows quiet. The midnight hour is not simply a poetic phrase. It is a spiritual experience that countless people have faced when their strength is nearly gone and their faith feels fragile. It is the moment when a person looks around and wonders whether anything will ever change. It is the moment when prayers feel unanswered, when doors remain closed, and when the future appears hidden behind a wall of uncertainty. Yet, throughout history, the midnight hour has repeatedly proven to be the moment when heaven moves in ways no human could predict. The darkness that feels so overwhelming is often the exact environment where transformation begins to take shape. Many people believe miracles arriving in bright daylight, surrounded by celebration and clarity, but the pattern revealed through faith tells a different story. Miracles often arrive quietly, almost secretly, while the world is asleep and the situation appears impossible. When Paul and Silas sat in that prison cell, their backs wounded and their hands chained, there was no visible reason for hope. The walls were thick, the guards were alert, and the sentence they faced seemed certain. Yet instead of surrendering to despair, they chose something unexpected. They began to sing. Their voices rose in the darkness, not because their circumstances had improved, but because their faith was stronger than what they could see. That act of faith created a moment that would echo through history. The ground began to shake. Chains that had been fastened tightly suddenly loosened and fell away. Prison doors swung open in the middle of the night. In a place designed to silence hope, the midnight hour became the birthplace of freedom. This pattern appears again and again throughout the stories of faith. When Lazarus died, everyone believed the situation was final. The mourning had already begun. The tomb had already been sealed. By every human measurement, the story was finished. But when Jesus arrived, he revealed a truth that still challenges human understanding today. What looks like the end may only be the moment before a miracle. The command was spoken, and Lazarus walked out of the darkness of the tomb into the light of life. The people who witnessed it were stunned because they had already accepted defeat. They had closed the door on hope too early. This is the tension that exists in every midnight hour. Darkness tries to convince the human mind that nothing will change, that the struggle will last forever, that the silence means abandonment. But faith whispers a different message. Faith says that God is often working behind the scenes when nothing seems to be happening on the surface. The most powerful movements of destiny rarely announce themselves with noise or spectacle. They develop quietly, patiently, and often invisibly until the exact moment arrives. Think about the night before the resurrection of Jesus. To the world, it appeared that darkness had won. The disciples were scattered, afraid, and heartbroken. The one they believed would change everything had been crucified and placed in a sealed tomb. Soldiers guarded the entrance. A heavy stone blocked the way. From every human perspective, hope had been buried. Yet, during those silent hours before dawn, something extraordinary was already unfolding. The darkness that seemed permanent was only temporary. The sealed tomb that looked like a prison was about to become the doorway to the greatest victory in history. When the stone was rolled away and the empty tomb was revealed, the world discovered a truth that still echoes through generations. Darkness never has the final word. This is why the midnight hour should never be misunderstood. The moment when everything seems most uncertain may actually be the moment when the greatest breakthrough is closest. Many people abandon hope too soon because they cannot see what is happening in the unseen realm of preparation. They assume that silence means nothing is moving, when in reality, the most powerful changes are often forming quietly beneath the surface. Who's like the seed that grows in hidden soil before breaking through the ground, miracles often develop in places where human eyes cannot watch the process. The suspense of the midnight hour lies in not knowing exactly when the breakthrough will appear, but believing that it can appear at any moment. The darkness might feel long, the waiting might feel heavy, and the questions might feel endless, but the same God who moved in prisons, tombs, and impossible situations has never stopped working. The midnight hour may feel like the end of the road, but it may actually be the doorway to the moment when everything changes. The truth about the midnight hour is that it tests something deeper than strength. It tests belief. When everything is bright and life is moving smoothly, belief is easy. Hope feels natural when opportunities are open and the future seems predictable. But the real test of faith begins when the lights go out and the road ahead disappears into darkness. The midnight hour is that space where certainty fades and trust becomes the only thing that remains. It is the season when people discover whether their hope was built on circumstances or on something greater than circumstances. Many people walk confidently through daylight moments, but they struggle when the night becomes long and silent. Yet the most powerful transformations of the human spirit often happen in that very silence. The midnight hour forces the heart to confront its deepest questions. It asks whether you will surrender to the fear surrounding you or whether you will believe that something greater is still working beyond what you can see. History and faith continue to whisper the same message. The darkness that looks overwhelming may only be the final stage before the arrival of light. Think about the people who have experienced extraordinary breakthroughs in life. Rarely do those breakthroughs come without a season of struggle, doubt, and waiting. The path to victory often winds through valleys where hope feels fragile and patience feels impossible. The midnight hour is where endurance is born. It is where resilience grows quietly beneath the surface of pain and uncertainty. When Paul and Silas sang in their prison cell, they were not simply performing an act of worship. They were demonstrating a powerful truth about the human spirit. They refused to allow their chains to define their future. They refused to let the darkness dictate the final chapter of their story. In that moment, their faith became stronger than the prison surrounding them. Their voices rising in praise in the middle of the night became a declaration that circumstances do not control destiny when faith refuses to surrender. The earthquake that followed, the falling chains, and the open doors were not just dramatic events. They were reminders that faith in the midnight hour has the power to unlock doors that no human hand could open. The same principle continues to apply to every life today. Your midnight hour may not look like a prison cell, but it can feel just as confining. It may be the moment when dreams appear delayed, when opportunities vanish, or when challenges arrive that seem far beyond your ability to overcome. In those moments, the temptation to give up grows strong because the darkness tries to convince you that the night will never end. But the same pattern seen throughout faith and history still stands true. The darkest moment often arrives right before the breakthrough. The silence often grows deepest just before the answer appears. The waiting often feels longest just before the door finally opens. The midnight hour is not simply about enduring hardship, It is about recognizing that hardship may be the stage where miracles prepare to appear. Every sunrise begins in darkness. The world is at its quietest just before the first light breaks across the horizon. The sky does not suddenly become bright without first passing through the deepest part of the night. In the same way, many of life's greatest victories are born out of moments when hope seemed nearly gone. The darkness becomes the backdrop that allows the light to shine more powerfully than ever before. This is why the midnight hour should never cause you to close your eyes in defeat. Instead, it should remind you that something extraordinary may be closer than you think. What feels like the end may simply be the final page before a new chapter begins. The same God who moved in prison cells, opened sealed tombs, and turned despair into victory is still capable of moving in the unseen places of El Ife today. The night may feel long and the silence may feel heavy, but the story is not finished yet. Somewhere beyond the darkness, the first light of a miracle may already be forming. And when that moment arrives, you will realize that the midnight hour was never meant to destroy your hope. It was meant to prepare you for a breakthrough that could only happen when everything else seemed impossible. If you are benefiting from our topics, please subscribe, like, and turn on the bell notification so you can see our new videos early.